Sometimes, the greatest detectives aren't human. In this extraordinary story, a dog's unwavering loyalty leads to a groundbreaking discovery. Prepare to be amazed as you watch this faithful companion unlock the secrets of a missing person's whereabouts. Elias Thorne lived a quiet life. His world was small. It was perfect. His cottage sat near the edge of Maple Creek woods. The scent of pine and damp earth was his daily perfume. His hands, gnarled by time and craft, carved small wooden animals. Birds, foxes, bears. They lined his mantelpiece, a silent, wooden family. But he was not alone. He had Buddy. Buddy was a golden retriever. His fur was the color of autumn sunlight. His eyes were deep pools of liquid chocolate. They held a wisdom that went beyond dog. Buddy was not just a pet. He was a partner, a confidant, the other half of Elias's soul. Their days followed a simple rhythm, a song of two hearts beating as one. The sun would rise. Buddy's tail would start to thump against the floor. Thump, thump, thump. It was a gentle alarm clock. Elias would stir. He would smile. All right, you old rascal. I'm coming. They share breakfast. Elias had toast and black coffee. Buddy had his kibble, with a small piece of bacon crumbled on top. A shared tradition, a small act of love. Then came the walk. This was the pinnacle of their day. They would venture into Maple Creek woods. Elias knew every path, every gnarled root, every moss-covered stone. Buddy would trot ahead, nose to the ground, reading the story of the forest. He glanced back every few seconds, just to check, just to make sure his man was still there. Elias would nod. Buddy would continue his exploration. They were a team. In the afternoons, Elias worked. He sat in his worn leather armchair. Wood shavings would litter the floor around him. He would carve. His knife would move with a practiced grace. And at his feet, Buddy would sleep. His soft snores were the soundtrack to Elias's art. Sometimes, Elias would drop a piece of wood. Before he even settled, Buddy's head would lift. He was always watchful, always present. Evenings were for the fireplace. The flames would dance and crackle. Elias would read. Buddy would lay his heavy head on Elias's lap. Elias would rest a hand on Buddy's neck, his fingers stroking the soft fur. They didn't need words. They had this perfect, unspoken understanding, this unbreakable bond. Their life was a collection of these small, beautiful moments, a tapestry woven with threads of devotion and simple joy. It was a world built for two. One crisp Tuesday morning, the rhythm broke. The sun rose. Buddy's tail thumped against the floor. Thump, thump, thump. Elias got up. He smiled his usual smile. Time for the grand adventure, boy. He pulled on his worn hiking boots. He grabbed his favorite walking stick. Buddy danced by the door, his entire body wiggling with excitement. Elias clipped on the leash. He opened the door. The cool morning air rushed in. Back in an hour, Elias said to the empty cottage. He patted Buddy's head. Let's go, pal. They walked out the door, into the woods. An hour passed, then two. The mail carrier came and went. A delivery truck rumbled down the lane. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Inside the cottage, a bowl of kibble sat untouched. A half-finished wooden owl lay on the floor by the armchair. The house was silent. It was too silent. The front door was slightly ajar, just as Elias had left it. But he and Buddy did not return. The song of their life had stopped. Sarah, the neighbor from across the lane, noticed first. She was watering her petunias. She always saw Elias and Buddy return from their walk. Like clockwork, by 9 a.m., they were back. Today, the clock was broken. At noon, a knot of worry tightened in her stomach. She walked over to the cottage. The open door was a silent scream. Elias, she called out. Silence. She peeked inside. The stillness felt wrong, unnatural. She saw the untouched dog food. Her heart sank. She pulled out her phone. She called Sheriff Miller. Sheriff Brody Miller was a man who preferred paperwork to panic. He'd known Elias for 20 years. A solid man. Dependable. He arrived in 15 minutes. He took one look at the scene. He knew this was serious. Elias wouldn't just leave, Miller said, his jaw tight. And he would never, ever leave his dog. The search began. Deputies arrived. Volunteers from the town fanned out. They started with the main trail, the one Elias always walked. They called his name. Their voices were swallowed by the vast, indifferent woods. Hours turned into a cold, dark night. There was no sign, No Elias. No Buddy. The hope began to curdle into fear. The next morning, a lone figure appeared at the edge of the woods. It stumbled out of the trees. It was Buddy. His golden fur was caked with mud and burrs. His leash was still attached, its end frayed and chewed. He was exhausted. He was panting heavily, but he wasn't looking for rest. He ran straight to Elias's front door. He pawed at it frantically. He let out a sharp, desperate bark. It wasn't a normal bark. It was a cry, a plea. Sheriff Miller knelt down. "Hey, boy. Hey, Buddy. Where is he? Where's Elias?" Buddy whined. He licked the sheriff's hand, then turned. He ran back towards the woods, barking. He stopped at the tree line. He looked back, his eyes begging them to follow. "All right," Miller said to his deputy. "Get a fresh team. The dog knows something." They followed Buddy. He didn't lead them down the main path. He ignored it completely. He pulled them deeper into the woods, through thick undergrowth, over fallen logs. His determination was a physical force, pulling the search party along. He sniffed the air. He dug at the ground. He whined at the base of certain trees. The searchers were trained professionals. They followed procedure. But Buddy was following something else. An invisible thread. A scent of love and worry only he could detect. For 2 days, this was the pattern. Buddy would lead. The humans would follow. They found nothing. Doubts began to creep in. "Sheriff, the dog is exhausted," a young deputy said. "He might be disoriented. We're searching miles from Elias's known route. The dog is the only thing we've got," Miller grunted. He looked at Buddy. The dog was limping slightly. He was clearly running on fumes, but his eyes were still locked on some distant, unseen goal. There was no doubt in those eyes, only purpose. On the 3rd day, Buddy did something strange. He led them away from the deep woods. He headed toward the old North Quarry. It had been abandoned for 50 years. It was a dangerous place, a scar on the landscape, fenced off, pocked with pits and sudden drops. "No way Elias came out here," the deputy said, shaking his head. "The fence is intact. There's no reason for him to be here." But Buddy was insistent. He ran to a section of the chain-link fence. He began digging frantically underneath it. Dirt flew. He whined, a high, piercing sound of pure distress. He clawed his way under the fence and looked back, barking. Sheriff Miller stared at the dog, then at the grim, silent quarry. Every logical instinct told him this was a waste of time. But the look in Buddy's eyes, it was more than instinct. It was a testimony. "Cut the fence," Miller ordered. His team looked at him, surprised. "I said cut the fence. We follow the dog." They snipped the chain link. The team followed Buddy into the quarry. The ground was treacherous. Loose gravel shifted under their boots. Buddy didn't hesitate. He ran with a renewed energy. He ran as if Elias was calling his name. He led them to the far side of the quarry, to a place hidden by a thick grove of overgrown sumac trees. It was a spot no one would ever think to look. It was a dead end, a wall of rock. Buddy stopped. He stood over a patch of dense brush, and he began to bark. It wasn't his pleading bark. It wasn't his frantic bark. It was a bark of discovery, a bark that said, "He is here." Sheriff Miller pushed through the sumac branches. The air was still. The ground looked solid. "What is it, boy?" he asked softly. Buddy didn't move. He kept barking, his gaze fixed on the ground at his paws. He pawed at a thick carpet of leaves and vines. A deputy knelt beside the dog. He brushed the debris away, and then he saw it. A dark opening, a narrow fissure in the rock, almost completely hidden by the overgrowth. It wasn't a cave. It was a hole, a remnant of an old, forgotten ventilation shaft from the mining days. The opening was maybe 4 feet across. "Sheriff," the deputy called, his voice tight with adrenaline. "Get over here." Miller rushed to his side. He peered down into the darkness. A wave of cold, damp air rose to meet him. He shone his powerful flashlight into the abyss. The beam cut through the black, and then they heard it. A weak voice, a faint groan from below. "Help!" Miller's heart hammered against his ribs. "Elias, is that you?" "It's Sheriff Miller." A pause. Then the voice came again, stronger this time. "Brody? Buddy's my dog." Buddy heard the voice, a sound he had been searching for, a sound he had almost given up hope of ever hearing again. He erupted. He whined and barked and tried to push his way toward the hole, his tail beating a frantic rhythm against the rocks. "He's here, Elias," Miller shouted down, his own voice thick with emotion. Buddy found you. He found you, old friend. We're getting you out. The rescue operation began immediately. It was a complex and delicate task. Miller radioed for the county's technical rescue team. They arrived with ropes, harnesses, and a backboard. The area was precarious. One wrong step could send loose rock tumbling into the shaft. Throughout it all, Buddy was a constant, furry presence. He refused to be led away. He lay as close to the edge of the hole as the rescuers would allow. His eyes never left the opening. He whined softly whenever a piece of equipment clattered. He watched every knot being tied, every rope being lowered. He was a silent, anxious supervisor. A paramedic was the first to rappel down. The shaft was about 20 feet deep. He found Elias at the bottom. He was conscious. His leg was broken in a bad way, and he was severely dehydrated and hypothermic. But he was alive. "Your dog's a hero," the paramedic said to Elias as he checked his vitals. Elias managed a weak smile. He was pale and shivering. "Always has been," he whispered. They carefully secured Elias to the stretcher. The team on the surface began to haul him up. It was slow, painstaking work. The ropes creaked under the strain. The moment the stretcher cleared the top of the shaft, Buddy was there. He scrambled forward, ignoring the calls of the deputies. He licked Elias's face, his hand, anything he could reach. His whole body trembled with a joy so profound it was heartbreaking to watch. Elias lifted a weak hand. He buried his fingers in Buddy's fur. "Good boy," he choked out, tears tracing paths through the grime on his cheeks. "Good boy, Buddy. You found me. You saved me." The reunion was a sacred moment. The tough, seasoned rescuers fell silent. The deputies turned away, clearing their throats. In the middle of the cold, harsh quarry, under the gray sky, there was only the pure, radiant love between a man and his dog. A bond that had refused to be broken by time, distance, or a dark hole in the ground. They loaded Elias into the ambulance. Buddy tried to jump in after him. "Let him in," Sheriff Miller said immediately. "He's not leaving his side. He's earned it." The paramedic nodded. Buddy hopped into the ambulance and curled up on the floor next to the gurney, his head resting near Elias's hand. The siren wailed, and they sped away from the quarry, leaving the silence behind. They were together again. The song of their life had started to play once more. The story of Elias and Buddy spread like wildfire, first through the hospital, then the town, then the regional news. The miracle at North Quarry. The dog who wouldn't give up. Elias recovered in the hospital. His leg was set. He was treated for exposure. And for every moment he was there, Buddy was a fixture. The hospital staff made a special exception. They saw the bond. They understood. Buddy would lie on a blanket at the foot of Elias's bed, a furry, golden guardian. He would only rise when Elias stirred, ready to offer a comforting nuzzle. Sheriff Miller held a press conference. He was a man of few words, but he spoke at length about Buddy. "I've worked with official search and rescue dogs my entire career," he told the reporters. "They are incredible animals, trained to the highest standard. But this was different. This wasn't just training. This was personal. Buddy wasn't following a scent trail. He was following his heart. He knew where Elias was. We didn't believe him. We almost gave up on his lead. We should have known better. That dog's intuition saved Elias Thorne's life. Period." The story sparked a larger conversation. Experts were called in to weigh in. Dr. Anya Sharma, a renowned animal behaviorist, was interviewed on a morning news program. "What we see in a story like this is the apex of the canine-human bond," she explained. "It's something we're still struggling to fully understand scientifically. We know dogs have an olfactory sense that is thousands of times more powerful than our own. They can likely smell the chemical changes of distress in their owner's scent from a great distance. But what Buddy did seems to transcend even that." She continued, her face lit with passion. "We call it intuition, but it's a complex matrix of sensory input, deep emotional connection, and an intelligence we often underestimate. Dogs read our body language, our scent, our tone of voice. They form a profound, empathetic link. When that link is broken, as it was when Elias went missing, a dog like Buddy will use every tool in its remarkable arsenal to mend it. He wasn't just looking for a person. He was looking for the other half of himself. Scientific articles were shared online. Studies on the canine brain. Research into the way dogs process emotion. The story of Elias and Buddy became a living, breathing example of what the data only hinted at. They were a testament to a power that science could measure, but never fully capture. The power of love. Back in Maple Creek, the skepticism of the first few days had transformed into awe. People who had once seen Buddy as just Elias's friendly dog now saw him as a hero. They saw the truth of the bond they had witnessed for years, but perhaps never truly appreciated. It wasn't just a man and his pet. It was a partnership, a family, a living example of loyalty in its purest form. In the hospital room, Elias would watch Buddy sleep. He would think about those 3 days in the dark. The cold, the pain, the fear. His only hope had been the thought of his dog. He knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that Buddy would not give up. That belief had kept him alive, and he had been right. The Buddy effect, as the local paper called it, was immediate and tangible. The Maple Creek Animal Shelter, normally a place of quiet hope and long waits, was suddenly bustling. Families came in, not just looking for a puppy, but asking about the older dogs. The loyal ones, the quiet ones who had been waiting for a second chance. "Everyone wants a Buddy," smiled Martha, the shelter's longtime manager. She watched as a family gently petted a shy, middle-aged hound mix. People are seeing dogs differently now, not as accessories, but as family. They're seeing their potential for incredible love and loyalty. Elias and Buddy's story reminded everyone what a gift it is to have a dog in your life. Adoption rates tripled in the weeks following the rescue. The story did more than just warm hearts. It inspired action. It prompted people to look at the animals waiting in shelters and see not a problem to be solved, but a bond waiting to be formed. A month later, Elias was finally home. He moved slower now. He leaned more heavily on his cane, the new one he'd carved while recovering. But his smile was brighter than ever. His cottage was filled once more with the comforting rhythm of their life together. The afternoons were the same. Elias would sit in his armchair. He would carve. His hands were a little shakier, but the wooden animals he created seemed to have more life in them now. And at his feet, Buddy would sleep, his head resting on Elias's good foot. One evening, as the fire crackled, Elias looked down at the dog. Buddy's eyes were closed, but his tail gave a soft, sleepy thump against the rug. Elias reached down and scratched that perfect spot behind Buddy's ears. The dog sighed, a sound of pure contentment. Elias didn't need to say anything. Buddy didn't need to hear it. Their bond wasn't built on words. It was built on morning walks and shared bacon, on watchful afternoons and fireside cuddles. It had been forged in comfort and tested in darkness. It had been proven in a cold, lonely quarry. It was a quiet, simple, and powerful thing. It was the love of a man for his dog, and the unwavering devotion of a dog for his man. It was, and would always be, unbreakable. The world was right again. Their song was playing, and it was the most beautiful music Elias had ever heard.